Before skyscrapers, before stock tickers, before currencies floated on screens, wealth followed a different rhythm. It moved slowly, quietly, and almost invisibly. Power did not announce itself. It inherited itself. In most history books, wealth looks loud. Empires rise and fall. Wars redraw borders. But behind those visible events, another story runs continuously. A story of families whose names rarely change, whose money rarely disappears, and whose influence rarely needs permission. This is not the story of sudden riches or modern billionaires. This is the story of old money. And to understand it, we have to forget everything modern culture tells us about wealth. Old money is not defined by how much you have. It is defined by how long you've had it. Generations matter more than numbers. Stability matters more than growth. Silence matters more than visibility. These families didn't chase power. Power came looking for them. And that difference shaped the world far more than most people realize. For most of human history, wealth came from land. Not businesses, not factories, not technology. Whoever controlled land controlled food. Whoever controlled food controlled survival. And whoever controlled survival controlled people. Long before banks existed, before stock markets or national debts, land was the original balance sheet. Old money families didn't start as financiers. They started as landholders. But land alone was never enough. The families that lasted learned something early. Land can be taken. Titles can be stripped. Armies can lose wars. But relationships, obligations, and financial leverage endure far longer. In medieval Europe, noble families built wealth through rents, taxes, and agricultural surplus. But only a few evolved beyond that. The families that became truly old money did not rely on brute force alone. They learned to finance kings instead of serving them. Lending to monarchs was dangerous, but it was also transformative. A king who owes you money is no longer fully sovereign. He may wear the crown, but he cannot move without your consent. That was the moment old money separated itself from nobility. As kingdoms grew more expensive to run, wars became longer, and administration became more complex. Rulers needed capital they could not generate fast enough. Taxes were slow. Loot was unreliable. Debt was immediate, and the families who provided that debt gained something far more valuable than interest. They gained access to trade monopolies. Old money families understood something modern culture still misunderstands. Wealth is not about consumption. It is about positioning. You don't spend to show power. You spend to secure influence. The families that survived for centuries rarely lived extravagantly compared to their income. Their real investments were invisible. Marriages into other powerful families, legal privileges written quietly into law, control over trade routes, ports, or financial systems that others depended on. By the Renaissance, this model matured. Families in Italy, the Netherlands, and parts of Germany began operating across borders. Their wealth no longer depended on a single king or country. If one ruler defaulted, another still paid. If one region collapsed, another carried the family forward. This was not patriotism. It was risk management. Old money never ties itself emotionally to flags. It ties itself structurally to systems. These families also understood time differently. Where merchants sought profit within a lifetime, old money families planned across generations. Decisions were judged not by immediate gain, but by whether the family would still be relevant 100 years later. That long horizon changed behavior. It encouraged restraint. It discouraged recklessness. It made survival the ultimate metric of success. One of the most important traits of old money families is their relationship with visibility. New wealth seeks attention, not because of humility, but because visibility invites risk. The more people know what you control, the easier it is to target you politically, socially, or legally. Old money learned to let institutions carry their influence. Instead, banks. Governments often interacted with these structures without fully seeing the families behind them. Religion also played a strategic role. In many periods, religious institutions were among the most stable organizations on earth. Aligning with them offered protection, legitimacy, and continuity. Some old money families embedded themselves into religious administration. Others financed it. Either way, they understood that moral authority could shield economic power. As global trade expanded, old money adapted again. Shipping, insurance, and currency exchange became the arteries of wealth. Families who controlled these functions didn't need to own goods. They owned the movement of goods. They earned from every transaction without touching the product itself. This was a shift from ownership to infrastructure, from possession to control. By the time modern nation-states emerged, many old money families were already embedded inside them. They helped design tax systems. They influenced central banking models. They advised governments on debt issuance. And crucially, they positioned themselves so that regardless of which political ideology ruled, their wealth remained necessary. Monarchies, republics, empires, democracies. Systems changed. The families adapted. What makes old money different from modern billionaires is not intelligence or ambition. It is discipline. Old money avoids extremes. It does not chase explosive growth if that growth risks instability. It prefers predictable returns, legal insulation, and generational continuity. Losses are acceptable. Extinction is not. Another defining feature is education. Old money families treat knowledge as an asset, not just technical skills, but cultural fluency. Languages, history, law, diplomacy. Their children are trained not only to manage wealth, but to navigate power. They learn when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let others take credit. This is why old money often appears boring. There are no viral moments, no dramatic rises, no public meltdowns, just quiet persistence. The goal is not dominance. The goal is permanence. But this system also creates distance. Over generations, old money families can become detached from the societies they influence. Their interests align with stability, not fairness. Preservation, not reform. This tension has always existed, and it explains why periods of extreme inequality often coincide with resentment toward invisible power structures. Old money does not collapse easily. When revolutions come, it sheds identities, changes names, waits. When wars destroy economies, it finances reconstruction. When currencies fail, it holds assets elsewhere. Its greatest strength is patience. Chapter 1 is not about specific names. It is about understanding the architecture, the mechanics that allow wealth to survive centuries while governments rise and fall. Once you understand this foundation, the individual families make sense. Their decisions stop looking mysterious. Their silence stops looking accidental, because old money is not a coincidence. It is a system refined over hundreds of years. And in the chapters ahead, we will step inside that system, family by family, region by region, and see how it still shapes the modern world far more than we are taught to notice. Below is Chapter 2 of the long-form documentary script on old money families in the world. Written in voiceover documentary style, calm, authoritative, monetization safe, and designed for long retention. No hype, no conspiracies stated as fact, only historical analysis and patterns. By the time most people hear about old money families, they imagine inherited mansions, faded portraits, and quiet wealth passed down through generations. But that image is incomplete. Old money is not defined by what is visible. It is defined by what never needs to be shown. True, old money families rarely appear on rich lists. They do not trend. They do not announce. Their power does not depend on attention. It depends on position. After the early banking dynasties of Europe laid the foundation, a second phase began. This phase was not about creating money. It was about embedding money into systems so deeply that ownership became almost invisible. In Britain, families like the Barings, the Cavendishes, and the Cecils did not dominate by owning factories or mines alone. They dominated by positioning themselves at the intersection of finance, land, and government. When wars were financed, they were present. When trade routes expanded, they advised. When colonies were administered, their sons were already inside the institutions managing them. Their wealth survived not because it grew fast, but because it was protected by law, tradition, and access Land ownership mattered, but influence mattered more. Many of these families quietly shaped tax policy, trade law, and banking regulation long before the public ever voted on such matters. Across the Channel, in France, old money took a different shape. Families tied to state finance, bonds, and infrastructure learned early that revolutions destroy visible wealth, but often preserve invisible claims. Titles vanished, estates were seized, but debt instruments, foreign accounts, and legal protections endured. Those who understood paperwork survived when those who trusted symbols did not. In Switzerland, something even more unusual happened. Old money families did not rule empires. They built neutrality into a business model. By avoiding wars, alliances, and public ambition, Swiss banking families became custodians rather than conquerors. Their strength came from discretion. When other nations burned records, Switzerland archived them. When trust collapsed elsewhere, deposits quietly moved uphill into safety. Old money learned a critical lesson here. The safest power is the power that claims not to have any. In the United States, old money did not arrive with castles or kings. It arrived through railroads, oil, steel, and banking. Families like the Rockefellers, Mellons, DuPonts, and Vanderbilts built enormous fortunes in a short time. But what turned them into old money was not the speed of accumulation. It was what came next. They converted volatile industrial wealth into permanent institutions, foundations, universities, trusts, endowments, legal structures designed not to grow explosively, but to last indefinitely. Over time, ownership shifted from individuals to entities. Names faded from balance sheets, but influence remained embedded in boards, policies, and financial pipelines. This is where many people misunderstand old money. They think wealth disappears. It does not. It changes form. By the early 20th century, the smartest families no longer aimed to own companies outright. They aimed to influence capital flows, to sit on advisory boards, to shape lending decisions, to guide mergers quietly rather than lead them publicly. At this stage, old money stopped competing with new money. It let new money take risks, chase growth, and absorb volatility. Old money positioned itself downstream, extracting stability from chaos. Globally, similar patterns repeated. In Italy, ancient banking families evolved into industrial and financial stakeholders woven into national infrastructure. In Germany, old capital aligned closely with manufacturing and export finance. In Japan, pre-war merchant families transitioned into keiretsu structures, spreading ownership across networks rather than concentrating it in names. What connects all of them is not culture or nationality, it is strategy. Old money avoids visibility, it prefers predictability, it values relationships more than returns. It invests in continuity rather than innovation, and most importantly, it understands time differently. Where new wealth asks, how much can this make this year? Old wealth asks, will this still matter in 50 years? This difference shapes everything. Old money families train heirs not to chase opportunity, but to preserve optionality. They do not teach how to win fast. They teach how not to lose permanently. Education focuses on law, history, governance, and finance, not because these fields are glamorous, but because they control frameworks within which others must operate. By this stage in history, old money no longer needs to control governments directly. Governments already depend on systems old money helped design. Financial stability, bond markets, institutional investing, and legal continuity all quietly favor those who understand them early and deeply. This is why old money rarely collapses suddenly. It erodes slowly, often over generations, usually due to complacency rather than attack. And yet, even old money is not immune to change. As global transparency increases, as capital moves faster, and as political pressure grows, the techniques of invisibility are becoming harder to maintain. The question is no longer whether old money exists. It is whether it can remain quiet in a world that rewards exposure. That question leads directly into the next chapter. Because to understand whether old money still rules, we have to examine how it adapted in the modern era when power became digital, global, and constantly observed. And that story is far more recent than most people realize. By the 20th century, old money had learned a lesson newer fortunes were still struggling to understand. Power survives best when it stops looking like power. The most enduring families no longer needed to own banks directly, sit on thrones, or place their names on skyscrapers. They had already built something more resilient: influence. Without visibility, as empires collapsed and democracies expanded, visibility became a liability. Revolutions didn't target quiet shareholders, they targeted kings, tycoons, and symbols. Old money adapted by retreating from the spotlight while tightening its grip behind the scenes. This is where the modern phase of old money begins. Families that once ruled through land and titles shifted toward trusts, foundations, holding companies, and private investment vehicles. Ownership became layered. Control became indirect. Wealth became harder to trace, not because it vanished, but because it learned to hide in plain sight. By the mid-1900s, many old families were no longer defined by what they owned, but by what they influenced. Universities, legal systems, central banks, cultural institutions. Philanthropy became a tool not just of generosity, but a continuity. Endowments outlived governments. Foundations shaped research agendas, economic thinking, and even public morality. Old money understood something modern wealth often forgets. You don't need to win every generation. You only need to avoid losing. Take Europe's banking dynasties that survived world wars, currency collapses, and regime changes. Their secret wasn't prediction, it was insulation. Assets were diversified across borders long before globalization became fashionable. Legal structures were designed to survive confiscation. Family governance was stricter than corporate governance. Emotional decision-making was treated as a risk factor. Children weren't raised to chase money. They were trained to preserve systems. Education focused on law, history, diplomacy, and finance, not to impress, but to understand how power actually moves. Old money families didn't ask how much something could earn this year. They asked whether it would still matter in 50 years. As financial markets exploded in size and speed, these families often appeared conservative, even outdated. They avoided hype. They ignored bubbles. They exited quietly when valuations detached from reality, while headlines celebrated disruption. Old money quietly favored endurance. This didn't mean they rejected modern finance. They simply used it differently. Hedge funds, private equity, sovereign bonds, real assets, intellectual property, always diversified, always patient, always structured to protect the core. And while public discourse focused on billionaires, old money rarely competed for the title of richest. Net worth rankings are snapshots. Old money thinks in bloodlines. This is also where myth and reality diverge. Old money families are often imagined as puppet masters controlling the world. The truth is more subtle and more human. They don't control everything. They don't always agree. They make mistakes. They lose fortunes. Some branches fail completely. But what separates them from most is not omnipotence. It's discipline. They understand that wealth is fragile when it lacks structure. That influence fades when it seeks attention. That systems matter more than individuals. In a modern world, where money moves faster than ever and reputations rise and fall overnight, old money plays a different game. It invests in time. It waits. It compounds quietly. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The world often debates inequality as if wealth is something that resets naturally over time. As if history constantly clears the board. Old money proves the opposite. When systems are designed to preserve advantage, they do exactly that. The real question isn't whether old money exists. It's whether modern societies understand how quietly it operates. Because power that announces itself can be challenged. Power that blends into institutions becomes permanent. Old money didn't survive by being stronger. It survived by being patient. And as long as systems reward continuity over disruption, old money won't disappear. It will simply remain what it has always been: invisible, enduring, waiting.